He was only 15 years old. A quiet kid. Bullied. Struggling. Barely noticed. Until one morning, he became impossible to ignore. This is the story of Kip Kinkel. Before the headlines, before the sirens, before the words school shooting defined his name forever, Kip was just another teenager in Springfield, Oregon. Awkward. Withdrawn. Obsessed with weapons, but also desperate to belong. Teachers saw a troubled student. Classmates saw a weird kid. His parents saw a son they were trying to help. What no one fully understood was how fast Kip was unraveling. He struggled in school. His grades were slipping. He was angry, confused, and isolated. He wrote disturbing thoughts in journals. He talked about violence in ways that made people uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to stop what was coming. There were warning signs. Kip had been caught with a gun at school months earlier. Instead of prison, he was suspended and sent to counseling. His parents believed they could still reach him, that therapy, structure, and care would be enough. For a moment, it seemed like it might work. But inside Kip's mind, something was breaking. He felt humiliated, rejected, powerless, and he became obsessed with one idea: being seen. On May 20th, 1998, that obsession turned deadly. But before the school, before the chaos, before the world learned his name, Kip Kinkel made a decision that would erase his family forever. Because the first people to pay the price weren't strangers. They were the people who loved him most. The night before the shooting, everything crossed a line. On May 19th, 1998, Kip was confronted by his parents. They had discovered the truth he had been hiding, that he was secretly stockpiling weapons and ammunition, and that he had stolen a gun despite strict rules at home. For Kip, this wasn't just punishment. It was exposure. His father demanded answers. His mother tried to calm him, to understand what was happening inside her son's head. They told him the guns would be removed, that more help was coming, that this behavior could not continue. To them, it was a turning point. To Kip, it felt like the end. That night, alone in his room, Kip wrote in his journal. His thoughts spiraled: anger, humiliation, fear, and a growing sense that he had lost control of his own story. He felt cornered, powerless, invisible again, and he decided he would not let that happen. In the early hours of the morning, Kip retrieved a rifle. He walked through his house while his parents slept. There was no argument, no struggle. He shot them both. When the sun came up, Kip didn't run. He didn't hide the bodies. He went back to his room, waited, and then calmly prepared for school. He packed weapons, loaded magazines, put on normal clothes. Then he walked out of the house, leaving his parents dead inside, and headed to Thurston High School as if it were any other day. The attack began in minutes. When Kip arrived at Thurston High School that morning, nothing looked unusual. Students were laughing. Teachers were heading to class. It was just another Wednesday. Then the first shots rang out. Kip opened fire in the school hallway, shooting classmates at random. Students ran, screamed, dropped to the floor. Some hid in classrooms. Others fled outside, not knowing where the danger was coming from. Within moments, the school turned into chaos. 2 students were killed. More than 20 others were wounded. Teachers tried to protect students. Some classmates tackled Kip. Others dragged injured friends to safety. The shooting stopped, not because Kip ran out of targets, but because he was physically restrained by fellow students. When police arrived, Kip didn't resist. He surrendered quietly. As officers led him away, the reality set in. This wasn't an accident or a single violent outburst. It was a mass shooting carried out by a 15-year-old boy after he had already murdered his parents hours earlier. Investigators uncovered what had been missed. He had written about killing, talked about suicide, been caught with a weapon at school before, and struggled mentally for years. Yet the warnings were never connected in time. The shooting was over, but the consequences were just beginning. The trial forced everyone to confront a question with no easy answer. How do you hold a child accountable for acts this horrific? Legally, Kip was 15, but the crimes were adult in scale and consequence. Prosecutors laid out the timeline: warning signs, the gun found at school months earlier, violent writings, mental health struggles that were known but never fully addressed. They argued he knew what he was doing, planned the murders of his parents, and brought multiple weapons to school with intent to kill. The defense didn't deny the facts. They focused on his mental state. Psychiatrists testified he suffered from severe mental illness, including paranoid schizophrenia. They described a teenager disconnected from reality, consumed by delusions, unable to fully grasp consequences in the moments leading up to the violence. The courtroom carried a heavy contradiction, a child who committed acts so brutal they defied comprehension. Families of victims spoke through tears about children who never came home, classmates permanently altered, a community that would never feel safe the same way again, and Kip's parents killed by their own child. Then came the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. No celebration. No relief. Only silence. Because even punishment couldn't undo what was done. The sentence didn't end the debate. It started it. Kip was sent to prison for life, a teenager condemned to spend the rest of his existence behind bars. No parole. No timeline. No second chance. For many families, it was the only outcome that felt even remotely just. 2 students were dead. Dozens injured. A school and an entire community permanently scarred. But as years passed, the case refused to stay simple. Psychiatrists continued to study his mental state. Reports showed he responded to treatment in prison. With medication, delusions faded. The person he became behind bars was not the same boy who committed the crimes. That raised an uncomfortable truth. If severe mental illness was central, and warning signs existed but weren't acted on strongly enough, then this wasn't only a story about one boy's violence. It was a story about failure. Failure to take threats seriously, failure to intervene when weapons were already found, failure to treat mental health with the urgency of physical danger. Years later, laws changed. Juvenile life without parole sentences became heavily restricted, and cases like Kip's were re-examined through a new lens. And that's why this case still matters. It sits at the intersection of mental illness, accountability, prevention, and punishment. There is no ending that feels right. The victims never get their lives back. The community never forgets. And Kip will live every day with what he did. What do you think justice should look like in cases like this? Write your thoughts in the comments.